Greetings, time for another true story. Back in the late 1970s, I spent some time in New Zealand, and I got to know some people there and spent some time on a sheep ranch. So let's, when I was there, they had like world record amount of sheep. I think in 1980 they had a population somewhere between 40 and 60 million sheep in New Zealand. They were everywhere. I mean, you had sheep on the roads and the streets and on the trails and the graveyards and the back airfields. You had to chase them off, run around people's yards. I guess a lot of the country was open range back then, back in the 70s. But my gosh, there was an awful lot of sheep. You know, here in Alaska when we get cold, well, first of all, Americans, they keep their dogs in the car with them or in the truck with them, right? Well, when it gets cold in Alaska, we got kind of a joke, you know, the colder it is, the more dogs you put in the vehicle with you. But when I was in New Zealand, they never allowed their dogs to sit with them inside their cars or trucks. They put them in the boot, which is another word that most people around the world call the back of your car there where you store all your gear, you know. Not a trunk, they call it a boot. Well, anyway, I saw them take 4 dogs and put in the front, in the boot, of a Volkswagen Beetle. They just snap their finger and whistle, and they jump into that doggone Volkswagen in the front. They shut the lid. They never made a sound until they opened up the lid, came back out. And they were putting 6 to 8 dogs in the back of a boot or of a large Ford-like car. I couldn't believe it. But I saw all kinds of different kinds of sheepdogs while I was there. All kinds of different breeds. I mean, there's a certain breed that you kind of have in your mind that's a sheepdog. But I saw people using a lot of strange dogs. I think they used whatever they could. And back then they told me that a dog, a good sheepdog, was worth more than a man as far as his wages. So I spent some time up at looked around the sheep stations. They shear the sheep kind of early spring, kind of late fall, probably late fall, winter. But they got these great big sheds, and they shear all the sheep, get all the wool off them, and then the first thing in the spring they run them through what they call sheep dip. Now back then, back in the 60s and 70s, it was just a concrete place for water. Here, I'll show you some pictures. These are pictures of me dipping sheep. Anyway, they put water in there and they round up all the sheep, put them around a corral type thing, and bring them all in. I guess you call that a muster. Anyway, they'd run those sheep one at a time down that ditch full of water. They were swimming up to their neck. But you had to have a long pole, like a long stick, you know, and you push the head of the sheep so it went under the water and it comes up and goes bloop, 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 bloop. Yeah, choking on that water. But I helped them dip a lot of sheep that day. I don't know how many hundreds of sheep we ran through that sheep dip. Now, I don't think they're very strong environmental records or, you know, regulations, let's just say, because, man, that sheep dip stunk. And it smelled like a strong insecticide or some other kind of medication, so you know it wasn't that good, and it kind of burned your eyes when you're around it, and after you got some on your hands, it kind of burned that too. So I imagine that nowadays they've got some environmental restrictions on that. Yeah, but the reason they did it is that sheep, they get lice and flies and skin disease and other problems, and so they dip these sheep, that medication. Why they don't spray them, I guess they have to dip them so they get totally covered, you know. When I got to New Zealand, you know, I bought a bunch of New Zealand clothes, including the farm jersey, you know, that I'm wearing here. I enjoy being a farmer and a rancher. I always always wanted to be one, I guess. But there's thousands and thousands of sheep all over the place. I broke away from the sheep camp or the station. I gotta tell you how we got there, though. We had left the Canterbury Plains and we got on the train, and it was a narrow gauge train, narrower than our trains. And the train left kind of the Canterbury area and went up towards Arthur's Pass at the Waikamaria River, I believe it was called. Well, we went up there a long ways. I think we actually went between the 15th and the 16th tunnel. And we stopped because it was prearranged to drop us off. It's kind of like the Alaska Railroad does for the people that live in the bush. It'll stop in the middle of the tracks and load people up, take gear off. Well, the same thing was going on here in New Zealand. And these people had 50,000 hectares up there in the mountains on this river that came down and entered the main part of the river. You know, we had to cross on this bridge. So we unloaded the train, all of our equipment, and then we had to walk across this old rickety old bridge over to where the sheep station or the cabin was. I'm not sure exactly how far we were on that river up that valley, but I know we were above the gorge. There's a big gorge on that river, and we had gone above the gorge. Anyway, we got to the sheep station, and there was a little house there, and I think they had just a wood stove, and they had kind of an old-fashioned radio to contact the train, let them know when they want to get picked up. So anyway, I decided to, I have a hard time standing up here today. I broke away about lunchtime and decided to climb up into what they call the Southern Alps, in the mountains there above the sheep station. And of course they told me about, watch out for the wild boar. You know, we talk about grizzly bears and tell bear stories around the campfire here in Alaska, but in New Zealand they talk about wild boar, and these things grow, I think, up around 400 pounds. And so they said, keep an eye out for the wild boar, don't run into them. So I didn't want to run into those. But anyway, I got up, I must have got 500 feet above the sheep station. I jumped something in the woods, scared the crap out of me. I thought it was a boar. Turned out it was a deer, and it didn't have any horns, so it was a female. And it was a different kind of deer than I'd seen before. And I think they have fallow deer. They have red deer. I know what a red deer looks like. And they also have a fallow deer, they call it. F-A-L-L-O-W. I think that's what I saw. I told them what I saw, and they said there was a few around in the area. But anyway, we had a nice meal there, and you know, it was time to leave. You just get on the radio and let the railroad know, and they'd come by at a certain time. It was in the dark. A certain time at night this time. Anyway, the guy I was with, he got out in the middle of the railroad tracks and had a light like this, a flashlight, which they call torch down there, and they were flashing the train coming straight at him, just to remind him to stop. Of course, we all got out of the way, you know. But anyway, they picked us up and took us back into Canterbury, into where these people lived. They had another little place. It was up out of Christchurch, at Gibby's Pass Road, I think it was. Not quite sure. Well, I was with another guy there outside of Christchurch, and sitting on a fence, and he said his neighbors had asked him to move about 30-40 head of cattle from one pasture to another pasture. And they don't call them field or pastures down there, they call them paddocks or something like that. Anyway, I had a hard time sometimes. Even though I wore New Zealander clothes, you know, your speech and your mannerisms set you off as an American right away. But anyway, he needed to move these cattle, and I said, oh, you're going to move them with a sheepdog. Well, I've never done it before, he said, but it should work, shouldn't it? Well, anyway, the cattle were down there, and the field that they wanted to put them in were over here. And he whistled to the dogs, beep, 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 and down they go. And we're just talking, and pretty hear this loud noise coming. Here come the cows. No, here come the sheepdogs. They were running this way as fast as they can, and every one of them cows with a big bull ahead of them was chasing the dogs. See, anyway, moving them cattle with the sheepdogs didn't work. They finally had to get in there with some people and kind of herd them up, which they were used to, but they didn't like those sheepdogs. Like I said, I was not real fond of mutton, but yeah, that young lamb chops, pretty doggone good. I really enjoyed some of the clothes I bought. I actually still have some. After 40 some years, I still own a Swan Dry, waterproof, pullover wool poncho type thing with a hood on it. And of course I can't get in it now because I'm a few pounds heavier than I was when I bought it. But as I age, I'm losing weight like most old men. And eventually I'll get back into that. But it's 40, oh my gosh, it's 45 years old. It's not moth-eaten, not bothered. Look, take it out, it looks just... But I really enjoy ranching and farming. They're my kind of people. You know, we get our wealth from the earth. You know, it comes out of the ground. Whether it's oils, minerals, sheep, goats, fish, something you dig up or something you plant. It comes from the ground. And then after that, everything is kind of processed and manufactured and distributed. And that's add-on costs. But you start out, you know, with the true wealth that comes from the earth itself. I really enjoyed, I had a place, I'll tell you about it. I was in my early mid-20s and I built a place on some acreage, and I did intensive, nice little house. Wasn't real big, 2-3 bedroom and a bath, you know, 1,300 square feet, had a carport and stuff. But it was out in the middle of an area where I had a beautiful view of Mount Rainier and cattle all around me and stuff. And oh, I enjoyed gardening there. I used to make these French intensive gardens like they started years ago, build them up, and I grew everything you can think of. I grew squash and hauled it away in the wheelbarrows. Tomatoes. I had gooseberry bushes. I had 12 commercial blueberry bushes. I had rhubarb. I had Jerusalem artichokes. I had 60 feet of raspberry and another 60 feet of Oregon marionberries. Like I said, I had gooseberries, and if I could try to grow it, I was trying to grow it. I mean, if you've never had a tree-ripe apricot, I mean, oh my gosh, they were wonderful. But I only had the place for a few years, but I had like, oh, I think I had a dozen trees, and I had peaches and apricots and plums and apples and great big Gravenstein apples. Oh gosh, that stuff was good. But that was a little pride and joy. And then unfortunately someone came into my life who was, shall we say, yeah, selfish, self-centered, couldn't tell the truth, manipulative, backstabbing. Anyway, they eventually talked me into selling that place. They kind of manipulated me to sell it. Boy, looking back, I sure miss it. Do a little gardening here in Sitka, but nothing that I used to have before. Oh, tree-ripe apples, peaches, and plums, and apricots. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that story, and stay tuned. There'll be more of them coming. Till then, see ya.